Marcus Wellington stood in his penthouse office, looking down at the city through floor-to-ceiling windows. At 32, he owned half the buildings he could see. His tech empire had made him one of the youngest billionaires in the world. But, as he watched people hurrying along the sidewalks far below, he felt completely alone. His assistant knocked and entered with a stack of documents. "Mr. Wellington, these are the profiles of women your matchmaker selected, all from wealthy families, highly educated and interested in meeting you." Marcus flipped through the glossy photos. Beautiful faces stared back at him, but their eyes seemed cold and calculating. He had dated women like these before. They were charming at dinner, laughed at his jokes, and always agreed with everything he said. But he knew they saw dollar signs. "Not him. Cancel all of these," Marcus said, tossing the files aside. "I'm done with this game." His assistant looked confused. "Sir, your matchmaker spent weeks arranging these meetings. These women come from the best families in the city." Marcus turned away from the window. "That's exactly the problem, Jennifer. They know who I am before they even meet me. They see my bank account, not my heart." That evening, Marcus sat alone in his mansion, eating dinner prepared by his private chef. The dining room could seat 20 people, but it was always just him. His phone buzzed with invitations to charity galas and exclusive parties, but he ignored them. He was tired of fake smiles and empty conversations. He thought about his parents, who had died in a car accident 5 years earlier. They had built their wealth from nothing, starting with a small computer repair shop. His mother always told him that true love meant someone would choose him even if he had nothing. But how could he ever know if someone truly loved him when everyone knew about his fortune? The next morning, Marcus made a decision that would change everything. He called his lawyer and closest friend, David Chen, to his office. "I need you to help me disappear," Marcus announced when David arrived. David nearly choked on his coffee. "What do you mean, disappear? Are you in some kind of trouble?" Marcus explained his plan. He wanted to leave his billionaire life behind, temporarily, and live as an ordinary person. He would take a simple job, rent a modest apartment, and see if he could find someone who would love him for who he really was, not what he owned. "This is crazy, Marcus," David said, shaking his head. "You can't just pretend to be poor. You don't know how to live like that." But Marcus had already thought it through. He would use his middle name, Alex, and his mother's maiden name, Thompson. Alex Thompson would be a simple guy looking for work and genuine connection. "I've been surrounded by wealth my entire adult life," Marcus explained. "I need to know what it feels like to be valued for something other than money. I need to find out who I really am when I'm not Marcus Wellington, the billionaire." David spent the next week helping Marcus prepare for his new identity. They created a fake resume showing Alex Thompson had worked various odd jobs. Marcus practiced talking like someone without expensive education, though his natural intelligence still showed through. They found him a small apartment in a working-class neighborhood across town. Marcus donated most of his expensive clothes to charity and bought simple jeans, t-shirts, and work boots. He traded his luxury cars for a used pickup truck that was 10 years old. Looking in the mirror, he barely recognized himself. Without his designer suits and perfectly styled hair, he looked like any other guy trying to make ends meet. The hardest part was leaving behind his comfortable life. Marcus had never cooked for himself, done his own laundry, or worried about paying bills. But he was determined to experience real life, the way most people lived it. On his last night as Marcus Wellington, he stood once again at his penthouse window. Tomorrow he would lock this place up and begin his greatest adventure. He wasn't looking for a temporary fling or someone to fool. He genuinely hoped to find a woman who could love Alex Thompson, a man who drove an old truck and worried about making rent. His phone rang. It was his business partner calling about a major deal. Marcus let it go to voicemail. For the next few months, David would handle the business, while Marcus discovered what it meant to live without billions in the bank. As he packed a single suitcase with his new simple clothes, Marcus felt nervous but excited. He had conquered the business world. But could Alex Thompson conquer something much more difficult? Finding true love? The next morning, Marcus Wellington disappeared. In his place, Alex Thompson drove across town in a rusty pickup truck, ready to start a new life. He had no idea that this decision would lead him to discoveries about love, friendship, and himself that no amount of money could ever buy. Alex parked outside his new apartment building, a 3-story complex with chipped paint and a broken mailbox. It was nothing like his mansion, but for the first time in years, he felt genuinely hopeful about the future. Somewhere in this ordinary world, his true love might be waiting for him. He grabbed his suitcase and walked toward his new life, leaving behind everything he had ever known. The real test was about to begin. Alex Thompson's first morning in his new apartment was a disaster. He had never used an alarm clock because his assistant always woke him up with a gentle knock and fresh coffee. Now he overslept and woke up in a panic, realizing he needed to find a job immediately. His small apartment had a tiny kitchen with old appliances and a refrigerator that made strange noises. Alex opened it to find it completely empty. He had never grocery shopped in his life. Everything had always been provided for him. Standing in his underwear in the cramped kitchen, he laughed at himself. The richest man he knew couldn't even make breakfast. After struggling with his new coffee maker, Alex dressed in his simple clothes and walked to the local diner for breakfast. The Sunrise Cafe was nothing like the 5-star restaurants he was used to. The floors were worn, the booths had cracked vinyl seats, and the air smelled like bacon grease and strong coffee. A waitress with tired eyes and graying hair approached his table. Her name tag read Betty. She poured coffee without being asked and handed him a laminated menu with food stains on it. "What'll it be, honey?" Betty asked, chomping on gum. Alex studied the menu, amazed by the low prices. At his usual restaurant, a single meal cost more than everything on this menu combined. "I'll have the pancakes and bacon, please." "Good choice. That's our special today." Betty smiled warmly, and Alex realized this was the first genuine smile he had received from a stranger in months. While eating his surprisingly delicious breakfast, Alex noticed a help wanted sign in the window. He asked Betty about it, and she called over the owner, a large man named Frank who wore an apron covered in flour. "We need someone to help in the kitchen and serve customers during busy times," Frank explained. "Pay is $10 an hour, plus tips. It's hard work, but if you're reliable, you've got the job. $10 an hour." Marcus Wellington made that much in the time it took him to blink. But Alex Thompson needed this job, so he accepted gratefully. Frank handed him an apron and put him to work immediately. Alex had never washed dishes, flipped burgers, or served customers. His first day was humbling. He burned eggs, dropped plates, and mixed up orders. The other employees, Maria, a single mother working 2 jobs, and Tommy, a college student saving for school, were patient with him but clearly wondered about his inexperience. "Haven't you ever had a job before?" Maria asked during their break, sitting outside behind the diner. Alex had prepared for this question. "I've been traveling a lot, taking care of family stuff. This is my first real job in a while." Maria nodded understandingly. "Well, you'll get the hang of it. Frank's a good boss. He helped me out when I was going through a tough divorce. This place is like family." Alex felt something he had never experienced in his corporate world: genuine care from coworkers who barely knew him. At Wellington Industries, people were nice to him because he was the boss. Here, Maria was kind because that's who she was. By the end of his first week, Alex was exhausted but strangely satisfied. His hands were rough from washing dishes, his feet hurt from standing all day, and he smelled like French fries. But he had earned $150 through his own work, plus $30 in tips. He had never been so proud of such a small amount of money. Living as Alex Thompson was harder than he had imagined. He had to budget carefully, shop for groceries, and figure out how to use the laundromat. Simple tasks that his money had always solved became daily challenges. But these challenges were teaching him things about himself he never knew. One evening, while walking home from work, Alex saw a commotion outside the apartment building next to his. A young woman was arguing with a man in an expensive suit. Alex recognized the type immediately, a slumlord or debt collector. "I told you I'll have the rent by Friday," the woman was saying. "My paycheck comes then." "That's what you said last month," the man replied coldly. "Pay now or you're out tomorrow." The woman looked desperate. She was probably Alex's age, with long brown hair and tired eyes that reminded him of Betty's. But unlike Betty, she seemed fragile, like someone fighting hard just to survive. Without thinking, Alex stepped forward. "Excuse me, is there a problem?" "Here?" The man in the suit looked Alex up and down, taking in his work clothes and rough hands. "This doesn't concern you, pal. Keep walking." But Alex couldn't walk away. Something about the woman's desperate expression touched him. "Maybe I can help. How much does she owe?" $300, the man said dismissively. "Unless you've got that kind of cash in those work boots, stay out of it." Alex did have that much money. In fact, he could buy the entire building without noticing the expense. But Alex Thompson was supposed to be struggling financially. Still, he reached into his pocket and pulled out the money he had been saving for groceries and utilities. "Here's $200, Alex said, handing over most of his earnings. "I'll get you the rest by tomorrow." The woman stared at him in shock. The landlord grabbed the money, counted it, and shrugged. "Fine, but I want the rest tomorrow or she's still out." After the man left, the woman turned to Alex with tears in her eyes. "I can't believe you did that. You don't even know me. I'm—" "Sarah, by the way, Sarah Martinez. Alex Thompson," he replied, shaking her hand. "And don't worry about it. Everyone needs help sometimes." Sarah studied his face carefully. "But that was probably all your money, wasn't it? Why would you help a stranger like that?" Alex had no good answer. Marcus Wellington helped people through charity donations and tax write-offs. But Alex Thompson had just given away money he actually needed because it felt right. "I guess I know what it's like to struggle," he said finally. That night, Alex sat in his small apartment eating ramen noodles for dinner because he had given Sarah his grocery money. But he felt better than he had after any expensive meal in his mansion. For the first time in his life, he had helped someone without expecting anything in return. He was beginning to understand something important about real life that all his money had hidden from him. The way people could care for each other, even when they had almost nothing to give. The next morning, Alex woke up to find Sarah knocking on his door with a plate of homemade cookies and a cup of coffee. She looked embarrassed, but determined. "I couldn't sleep all night thinking about what you did," Sarah said when Alex opened the door. "I don't have much, but I wanted to make you breakfast. It's the least I can do." Alex invited her in, amazed by the gesture. In his wealthy world, people showed gratitude with expensive gifts or business favors. Sarah's simple cookies, still warm from the oven, meant more to him than any corporate present he had ever received. "These are incredible," Alex said, biting into a chocolate chip cookie. "Where did you learn to bake like this?" Sarah smiled for the first time since he had met her. "My grandmother taught me. She always said that food made with love tastes better than anything else." She paused, looking around his sparse apartment. "I'm still trying to figure out why you helped me. Most people would have walked away." "Maybe I'm not most people," Alex replied, though he was beginning to realize that was exactly what he was trying to become. As they talked over coffee, Alex learned that Sarah worked as a nurse at the city hospital. She had moved to the neighborhood 2 years earlier to be closer to work and because it was all she could afford. Her dream was to become a nurse practitioner, but she was struggling to save money for the additional schooling. "What about you?" Sarah asked. "What do you do when you're not rescuing damsels in distress?" Alex told her about his job at the Sunrise Cafe. Sarah seemed impressed that he was working in food service, though she couldn't understand why someone his age was just starting in restaurants. There was something about Alex that didn't quite add up. His vocabulary was too sophisticated, his manners too refined for someone who claimed to have worked odd jobs his whole life. Over the following weeks, Alex and Sarah developed a friendship that gradually grew into something deeper. Sarah would stop by the diner during her breaks from the hospital, always ordering just coffee, because it was all she could afford. Alex would sneak her extra food, claiming the kitchen had made mistakes. On orders, their dates were simple but meaningful. They walked through the city park, sharing stories and dreams. They went to free outdoor concerts and spent hours talking on the steps of Alex's apartment building. Alex discovered that without the pressure of expensive restaurants and exclusive events, he could actually get to know someone naturally. Sarah was unlike any woman he had ever met. She was intelligent and caring, but also strong and independent. When Alex offered to pay for things, she politely refused, insisting they split costs or take turns. She had pride and principles that couldn't be bought. "I've been hurt before," Sarah confided one evening as they sat watching the sunset from a hill overlooking the city. "I dated a guy who seemed perfect, but it turned out he was married. He lied about everything. I swore I would never trust someone again unless I really knew who they were." Alex felt a stab of guilt. Here was Sarah, opening her heart after being deceived, and he was lying to her about his entire identity. But he told himself it was different. He wasn't trying to hurt her. He was trying to find out if she could love him for who he really was inside. At work, Alex's new friends were happy to see him getting closer to Sarah. Maria approved immediately. "That girl's got a good heart," she told Alex while they cleaned tables after the lunch rush. "She comes in here sometimes when she gets off her late shifts at the hospital. Always tips well even though she doesn't have much money." Frank, the diner owner, also liked Sarah. "She's real people," he said simply. "Not like some of these fancy girls who think they're too good for places like this." Alex began to understand what Frank meant. Sarah never looked down on anyone. She treated the homeless man who sometimes came to the diner with the same respect she showed everyone else. She helped elderly customers to their cars and always remembered the names of regular patrons. Her kindness wasn't an act. It was genuine. One evening, Sarah invited Alex over for dinner at her tiny apartment. It was even smaller than his, with secondhand furniture and walls covered with photos of her family. She had spent her day off, cooking a special meal. Nothing fancy, just spaghetti and homemade sauce, but made with obvious care. "I'm sorry it's not much," Sarah said, suddenly self-conscious about her modest home. Alex looked around the small space filled with books, plants, and personal touches that made it feel warm and alive. His mansion had been decorated by expensive designers, but it had never felt like a real home the way Sarah's apartment did. "It's perfect," Alex said, and he meant it completely. During dinner, Sarah talked about her work at the hospital. She loved helping people, even though the job was physically and emotionally demanding. She worked long hours for modest pay, but her eyes lit up when she described helping patients recover or comforting worried families. "Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to have enough money to not worry about rent or bills," Sarah admitted. "But then, I think I might lose sight of what really matters. When you don't have much, you appreciate small things more." Alex nearly choked on his wine. Here was someone who understood something he was only beginning to learn, that having everything could mean appreciating nothing. After dinner, they sat on Sarah's small couch, talking and laughing late into the night. When Alex finally kissed her, it was nothing like the calculated encounters he had experienced with wealthy women who were performing for his benefit. Sarah's kiss was real, unguarded, and full of genuine emotion. Walking home that night, Alex realized he was falling in love with Sarah Martinez. But the knowledge terrified him. How could he tell her the truth about who he really was? Would she still love Alex Thompson if she knew he was really Marcus Wellington, one of the richest men in the world? For the first time since beginning his experiment, Alex wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. He had found exactly what he was looking for, true love with someone who cared about him as a person. But his lies were growing bigger every day, and eventually the truth would have to come out. As he climbed the stairs to his apartment, Alex made a decision. He would tell Sarah everything soon. He just needed a little more time to figure out how to explain his deception without losing the most important thing he had ever found: her love. 2 months into their relationship, Alex's carefully constructed world began to crack. He had been living as Alex Thompson for nearly 4 months, and maintaining his double life was becoming increasingly difficult. The first warning sign came during a busy lunch shift at the diner. A group of businessmen in expensive suits walked in, and Alex immediately recognized one of them, Robert Hayes, a competitor who had tried to buy out Wellington Industries multiple times. Alex quickly ducked into the kitchen, but not before. Robert's eyes swept the dining room. "Everything okay, Alex?" Maria asked, noticing his sudden nervousness. "Fine," Alex mumbled, staying hidden until the men left. "Just felt dizzy for a moment." But Alex knew his luck wouldn't hold forever. The longer he stayed in his disguise, the more likely it became that someone from his real life would spot him. That evening, Sarah noticed he seemed distracted during their walk through the park. "You've been acting strange lately," she said, stopping beside a fountain. "Is something bothering you?" Alex wanted desperately to tell her everything, but fear held him back. "I'm just worried about work," he lied. "Frank's been talking about maybe cutting hours." Sarah took his hand. "We'll figure it out together. That's what people who care about each other do. They help each other through tough times." Her words made Alex's guilt even worse. Sarah was offering to help him through problems that didn't even exist, while he was lying to her about everything that mattered. The second crack in his facade came from an unexpected source. Sarah had been working extra shifts to save money, and the stress was showing. She looked tired all the time, and Alex could see she was barely making ends meet despite working herself to exhaustion. One morning, Sarah showed up at the diner looking terrible. She had dark circles under her eyes and seemed unsteady on her feet. "I'm fine," she insisted when Alex expressed concern. "Just a little tired." But during her lunch break, Sarah fainted right there in the diner. Alex caught her before she hit the floor, and Frank immediately called an ambulance. At the hospital, doctors said Sarah was suffering from exhaustion and malnutrition. She had been working so many hours and worrying so much about money that she wasn't taking care of herself. "She needs rest and proper nutrition," the doctor told Alex. "But she also needs to reduce her stress levels. Financial pressure can be just as harmful as physical exhaustion." Alex sat beside Sarah's hospital bed watching her sleep. He could solve all her problems with a single phone call. Marcus Wellington could pay off her debts, cover her medical bills, and ensure she never had to worry about money again. But Alex Thompson was supposed to be just as broke as she was. The internal conflict was tearing him apart. He had the power to help the woman he loved, but using that power would mean revealing his deception. When Sarah woke up, she was embarrassed about collapsing. "I'm so sorry," she said weakly. "I can't afford to miss work, and now I've got medical bills on top of everything else." "Don't worry about any of that," Alex said, holding her hand. "Just focus on getting better." But Sarah's situation got worse when she received her hospital bill 3 days later. Even with her insurance, she owed thousands of dollars. Alex watched, her face crumble as she read the numbers. "I don't know what I'm going to do," Sarah said, tears streaming down her face. "I can barely afford rent, and now this. Maybe I should just move back home with my parents and give up on my dreams." Alex couldn't stand it anymore. That night, He called David Chen from his burner phone, speaking quietly so Sarah wouldn't hear from the next room where she was resting. "I need you to anonymously pay off some medical bills," Alex whispered into the phone. "Marcus, this is getting complicated," David warned. "How long are you planning to keep this up? You've been gone for 4 months. The board is asking questions." "Just handle the bills," Alex insisted. "I'll figure out the rest later." David arranged for Sarah's medical bills to be mysteriously forgiven due to a clerical error and a hospital charity program. Sarah was amazed by her good luck, though Alex could see she was suspicious about the coincidence. The third crack came when Sarah decided she wanted to meet Alex's family. "You never talk about your parents or siblings," she said one evening. "I'd love to meet them." Alex had mentioned that his parents were dead, which was true, but he had invented stories about growing up poor and having no other family. Now Sarah wanted to visit the neighborhood where he claimed to have grown up. "Maybe we could drive by your old house sometime," Sarah suggested innocently. "I'd like to see where you came from." Alex made excuses, but Sarah's questions were becoming harder to dodge. She was falling in love with Alex Thompson, but Alex Thompson didn't really exist. Every story about his past was a carefully constructed lie. The breaking point came on a Saturday evening when Sarah surprised Alex with tickets to a charity auction at the city's most exclusive hotel. A patient's wealthy family had given her the tickets as a thank you gift. "I know it's not our usual kind of thing," Sarah said excitedly, "but I thought it would be fun to see how the other half lives. We can dress up and pretend to be rich for one night." Alex's blood went cold. The charity auction was being held at the hotel where Marcus Wellington was scheduled to receive a humanitarian award for his company's philanthropic work. His photo would be everywhere, and dozens of people would recognize him. "I don't think that's a good idea," Alex said quickly. "Those events are just for show. Rich people pretending to care about charity." Sarah looked hurt by his dismissive tone. "I just thought it would be nice to do something different together. We don't have to bid on anything. Just have dinner and dance a little." Alex realized he was trapped. If he refused to go, Sarah would be disappointed and suspicious. But if he went, his entire deception would be exposed in the most public and humiliating way possible. That night, Alex lay awake staring at the ceiling, knowing that his time as Alex Thompson was running out. He had found true love, but he had built it on a foundation of lies. Tomorrow, he would have to make a choice: continue lying to the woman he loved or risk losing her by telling the truth. The irony wasn't lost on him. He had become Alex Thompson, to find someone who would love him for who he really was. But now he had to reveal who he really was to find out if that love was strong enough to survive the truth. Alex knew he couldn't avoid the charity auction without hurting Sarah's feelings and raising more suspicions, so he made a desperate plan. He would attend the event but try to stay in the background, hoping no one would notice him in the crowd. On the night of the auction, Alex put on the only decent suit he owned as Alex Thompson, a simple black suit he had bought at a discount store. Sarah looked beautiful in a simple blue dress she had borrowed from a friend. She was so excited about their fancy night out that Alex felt sick with guilt. "You look handsome," Sarah said, adjusting his tie. "I can't wait to see inside the Grand Meridian Hotel. I've walked past it 100 times but never been inside." The Grand Meridian was one of the hotels Marcus Wellington's company owned. Alex knew every inch of the building, from the marble floors to the crystal chandeliers. But tonight, he had to pretend he was seeing it for the first time. As they walked into the elegant ballroom, Sarah gasped at the opulent decorations. "This is incredible," she whispered. "Look at those flowers. They must have cost more than I make in a month." Alex nodded, though he knew the flower arrangements had cost exactly $3,000 because he had personally approved the expense a week ago. Everything in the room, from the gold-trimmed tablecloths to the orchestra playing softly in the corner, represented his world. the world he had been hiding from Sarah. They found their assigned table in the back of the room, far from the main stage. Alex hoped they could have dinner quietly and leave early. But his hopes were crushed when the auction began, and Marcus Wellington's photo appeared on the large screens around the room. Tonight, we honor Marcus Wellington, CEO of Wellington Industries, for his outstanding charitable contributions, the announcer said. Mr. Wellington has donated over $50 million to various causes this year alone. Sarah stared at the photo on the screen, a professional headshot of Alex in an expensive suit with perfectly styled hair. Wow, he's younger than I expected, for someone so successful, she commented. He's actually quite handsome. Alex's heart pounded as he stared at his own image projected across the room. Several people at nearby tables were pointing at the screen and discussing his achievements. He pulled his suit jacket tighter and slouched lower in his chair. Are you feeling okay? Sarah asked, noticing his discomfort. You look pale. Before Alex could answer, disaster struck. A woman's voice called out from across the room. Marcus! Marcus Wellington! Is that you? Alex's blood turned to ice. Victoria Ashford, a socialite he had dated briefly 2 years ago, was walking directly toward their table. She was wearing a diamond necklace worth more than most people's houses and had the predatory smile Alex remembered well. I thought that was you, Victoria exclaimed, reaching their table. What are you doing sitting all the way back here, and why are you dressed like... She paused, taking in his discount suit and simple appearance with obvious confusion. Sarah looked between Alex and Victoria, clearly confused. I'm sorry, but I think you have the wrong person. This is Alex Thompson. Victoria laughed, a sharp sound that made other people turn to look. Alex Thompson? Marcus, what kind of game are you playing? She gestured toward the screen where his photo was still displayed. That's you up there receiving the humanitarian award? The color drained from Sarah's face as she looked from the screen to Alex to Victoria. The resemblance was unmistakable. Even with his simpler haircut and casual manner, Alex Thompson was clearly Marcus Wellington. I can explain, Alex started, but Sarah was already standing up from the table. You lied to me, Sarah said quietly, her voice shaking. Everything you told me was a lie. Sarah, please, let me explain. Alex pleaded, reaching for her hand. She pulled away from him. Don't touch me. I trusted you. I told you how much it hurt when someone lied to me before, and you did the same thing. Victoria watched the scene with obvious delight. Oh my, Marcus, did you not tell your little friend who you really are? How amusing. Shut up, Victoria, Alex snapped, finally showing some of his real personality. This has nothing to do with you. But the damage was done. Sarah's eyes filled with tears as the full extent of his deception hit her. You're a billionaire, she whispered. You let me worry about paying rent while you could buy this entire hotel. You watched me work myself sick trying to make ends meet. I wanted to help you, Alex said desperately. I paid your medical bills. I tried to take care of you without you knowing. You what? Sarah's voice rose. You paid my bills? Behind my back? Like I was some charity case? People at nearby tables were starting to stare and whisper. Alex realized that within minutes, everyone in the room would know that Marcus Wellington had been caught in some kind of romantic deception. We need to leave, Alex said, standing up. We can talk about this. Somewhere private. No, Sarah said firmly. I'm leaving. Alone. Don't follow me, and don't contact me again. She turned and walked quickly toward the exit, her borrowed dress swishing around her legs. Alex started to follow her, but Victoria grabbed his arm. Let her go, Marcus. Victoria said with false sympathy. She's not our kind of people anyway. What were you thinking, playing house with a nurse? Alex jerked his arm away from Victoria with such force that she stumbled backward. She's worth 100 of you, he said coldly. Then he ran after Sarah, ignoring the shocked whispers following him through the ballroom. But by the time Alex reached the hotel lobby, Sarah was already getting into a taxi. Through the window, he could see she was crying. The taxi pulled away before he could reach it, leaving Alex standing on the sidewalk in his cheap suit, watching the only woman he had ever truly loved disappear into the night. Back at his small apartment, Alex sat in the dark, still wearing his wrinkled suit. His phone kept buzzing with calls from business associates who had heard about the scene at the charity auction, but he ignored them all. He had gotten exactly what he deserved. He had set out to find someone who could love him without knowing about his money, and he had found her. But his deception had poisoned that love from the very beginning. Sarah hadn't just fallen in love with Alex Thompson. She had fallen in love with someone who didn't exist. Now Alex faced the hardest question of all. Was there any way to win back the trust of the woman he loved, or had his lies destroyed the most real thing he had ever found? For 3 weeks after the charity auction disaster, Alex tried desperately to contact Sarah. He called her phone, but she had blocked his number. He went to the hospital where she worked, but security wouldn't let him up to her floor. He even returned to the Sunrise Cafe, hoping she might come in. But Betty told him Sarah had asked her to call if Alex ever showed up. "That girl's been through enough," Betty said firmly, crossing her arms. "Whatever you did to her, you need to leave her alone now." Alex's friends at the diner had learned his true identity from news reports about the auction incident. Maria was disappointed, but not entirely surprised. "I knew something didn't add up about you," she admitted. "Nobody talks that fancy without having some education and money behind them." Frank was more direct. "I don't care how rich you are," he said while Alex cleaned out his small employee locker. "You hurt a good woman with your lies. That's not something money can fix." Alex moved back to his penthouse, but the luxury felt empty and meaningless now. He had everything money could buy, but he had lost the only thing that truly mattered to him. The expensive furniture, gourmet meals, and stunning city views couldn't fill the hole Sarah had left in his life. His business partner, David, tried to help him focus on work, but Alex couldn't concentrate on board meetings and profit reports. All he could think about was Sarah's face when she realized he had been lying to her all along. "You need to do something big," David finally told him during a late-night conversation in Alex's penthouse. "Something that shows her who you really are inside, not just your bank account." Alex had been thinking the same thing, but he didn't know how. Then, one morning while reading the newspaper, he saw an article that changed everything. The city hospital where Sarah worked was facing serious financial problems. Budget cuts meant they would have to close the emergency department where Sarah worked, leaving thousands of low-income patients without access to critical care. For the first time in weeks, Alex felt a spark of hope. This wasn't about winning Sarah back with money. This was about supporting something she truly cared about. But he knew he had to be careful. If Sarah discovered he was behind saving the hospital, she might think he was just trying to buy her forgiveness. Alex called an emergency meeting with his company's charitable foundation. "I want to make an anonymous donation to City General Hospital," he announced. "Enough to keep their emergency department running and expand their services." His foundation director looked confused. "Anonymous? Sir, donations of this size usually come with naming rights. We could have the Wellington Emergency Wing." "No," Alex said firmly. "This has to be completely anonymous. No publicity, no credit, nothing that connects back to me or my company." The donation of $20 million saved the hospital's emergency department and allowed them to hire more nurses and upgrade their equipment. The news media covered the story extensively, calling it a miracle donation from an angel benefactor who wished to remain unknown. Alex watched from a distance as Sarah and her colleagues celebrated on the hospital steps. Through news interviews, he learned that Sarah had been promoted to head nurse of the emergency department. She looked happy and passionate, talking about how the donation would help them save more lives. But Alex's plan went deeper than just saving Sarah's workplace. He remembered her dream of becoming a nurse practitioner, and he knew exactly how to help without revealing his involvement. Working through a network of lawyers and charitable organizations, Alex secretly established a scholarship program for working nurses who wanted to advance their education. The program specifically targeted healthcare workers who couldn't afford to quit their jobs to go back to school. It was perfect for someone in Sarah's situation. 3 months after the hospital donation, Sarah received a letter informing her that she had been selected for the new Healthcare Heroes Scholarship. The program would pay for her education while allowing her to continue working part-time. Sarah was interviewed on local television about receiving the scholarship, and Alex watched every minute of the coverage from his penthouse. "This scholarship is changing my life," Sarah told the reporter. "Whoever created this program understands that working nurses want to advance their careers but can't afford to stop helping patients. It's like someone really listened to what healthcare workers need." Alex smiled, knowing that he had listened during all those conversations when Sarah shared her dreams and fears with Alex Thompson. But his plan still wasn't complete. The final piece came when Alex learned that Sarah's apartment building was being sold to developers who planned to tear it down and force out all the low-income residents. Sarah and dozens of other families would lose their homes and be pushed out of the neighborhood. This time, Alex didn't work alone. He contacted Maria from the diner, Frank, and other people from the community who knew both Alex Thompson and Sarah. He revealed his plan to them and asked for their help. "You want to buy the building and turn it into affordable housing?" Maria asked, meeting Alex at the diner after hours. "Why should we trust you after what you did to Sarah?" "Because this isn't about me," Alex replied. "This is about doing what's right for the community. Sarah doesn't have to know I'm involved, but she shouldn't lose her home because of greedy developers." Frank leaned back in his chair, studying Alex carefully. "You really love her, don't you?" "More than I've ever loved anyone," Alex admitted. "But I also understand that I hurt her badly. Whether she ever forgives me or not, I want to help protect the people and places that matter to her." After long discussions, Maria and Frank agreed to help. Alex would purchase the building through a community organization that Frank helped establish. The building would be converted into permanent affordable housing, with current residents given first priority to stay. The community rallied around the project. Local businesses donated materials and labor. Residents volunteered their time. Sarah became one of the leaders of the effort, working nights and weekends to coordinate the renovation while continuing her nursing studies. Alex watched from the shadows as Sarah helped elderly residents move furniture and painted walls alongside her neighbors. She had found her true calling, not just healing people as a nurse, but building a stronger community where everyone looked out for each other. One evening, 6 months after the charity auction, Alex was walking past the renovated apartment building when he saw Sarah sitting on the front steps taking a study break. She looked tired but content, surrounded by textbooks and wearing scrubs from her hospital shift. For a moment, Alex considered walking past without saying anything, but something made him stop. "Sarah," he called softly. She looked up, and for a second, he saw surprise and pain flash across her face. Then her expression became guarded. "What are you doing here, Marcus?" "It's Alex," he said quietly. It was always Alex, at least the parts that mattered. Sarah closed her textbook and stood up. "What do you want?" "I want to apologize," Alex said, staying several feet away to give her space. "Not to win you back, not to make excuses, but because you deserve to know the truth about why I lied." Sarah crossed her arms. "I already know the truth. You're a rich man who was bored and decided to play pretend with a poor nurse." "No," Alex said firmly. "I was a lonely man who had never experienced real love or genuine friendship. I thought I had to hide my wealth to find out if someone could care about who I am inside." "And what did you discover?" Sarah asked, her voice still cold, but with a hint of curiosity. Alex looked at the renovated building, thinking about all the lives that had been improved by the community coming together. I discovered that you don't find out who you really are by pretending to be someone else. You find out by doing things that matter, by helping people, by being part of something bigger than yourself. Sarah studied his face carefully. The hospital donation, the scholarship program, this building, that was all you, wasn't it? Alex was surprised that she had figured it out. How did you know? Because Alex Thompson would have done exactly those things, Sarah said softly. The Alex I fell in love with cared about helping people, even when he didn't have much himself. These projects have that same heart. They stood in silence for several minutes, both thinking about what might have been and what could still be possible. I can't just forgive you and pretend the lies didn't happen, Sarah finally said. Trust isn't something you can buy back with donations and scholarships. I know, Alex replied. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that loving you changed me. The man I became when I was with you. That's who I want to be for the rest of my life, whether you're part of it or not. Sarah picked up her textbooks and walked toward the building entrance. At the door, she turned back to look at him. The Alex Thompson I knew was a good man, she said quietly. If Marcus Wellington wants to become that man for real, not just as a disguise, then maybe someday we can talk about being friends again. As Sarah disappeared into the building, Alex felt something he hadn't experienced in months. Hope. Not hope for getting back together, but hope that he could become the man Sarah had believed Alex Thompson to be. Walking back to his penthouse that night, Alex made a decision that would change his life forever. The next morning, he would begin the process of giving away most of his